Our next presenters are Bård Farstad and Roland Benedetti from Easy Systems. Bård is the co-founder and chief of strategy at Easy. He started Easy with his brother Alexander in 1999 and led product development and engineering into the company's first 10 years in the web content management market. Bård designed Easy's content repository, the core of the company's technology, and he also established Easy's fast-growing business in North America. Today, Bård collaborates with Easy's largest enterprise clients to understand their business needs and identify opportunities for digital success using Easy's content system, Easy Enterprise. Roland is Chief Product and Marketing Officer at Easy. He joined Easy in 2005 and established the company's business and operations in France, which spurred Easy's continued growth across Europe. In 2012, he opened Easy's New York office, where he now leads the product management, UX, and marketing teams. Welcome, Bård and Roland.
Hello. Thank you first to Dave, Subrata, Kevin, great talks. And our talk will be slightly shorter, but still we want to give you a little bit of insights on what we do, how we see that evolving digital world, and not only digital, also physical, and what we have in mind when we make a product, when we make technology at Easy. So I'd start with something we've heard a lot. I guess, that's a good, I will ask you, when was that from your perspective? Or maybe you can read it actually. But you don't know? Well, I mean, we've been hearing this again and again. This was summer 2010. And 6 years ago, a long time ago, I think we started to hear this before, most probably when the iPhone came, started to hear the web is dead, the web is dead. Us making web content management solutions, of course, that's not necessarily something we love. But the truth is actually, of course, it's far from dead. Of course, it's still a crucial point in the infrastructure of our customers and in the way you create customer experiences, user experiences today. So it's very important. The web is not dead. The web is still there. The web is just part of a bigger something now. It's part of a much more complex ecosystem. And the same goes for content management systems. And it's actually something we had in mind. Actually, not we, but probably I should say Bård had in mind when we created Easy Publish now. I think I would speak for Easy Publish 3 actually, which is probably 13 years ago. Yeah. This idea of actually creating a content management system which is not only for the web, but which is for beyond the web page, and which is to adapt to many contexts and many situations and channels. And that's what we want to go through today, because we really strongly think our customers, even if sometimes we say CMS is a commodity, our customers keep begging for more innovation, for more business value, for more things in the way they can deal with content. We were just the last 3 days in Austin, Texas, meeting with CMOs and digital CMOs, and they are all concerned about, almost all actually concerned about one thing. One of them was calling this content parity, having the ability to control their content. Actually, they don't control their content. And we think the content management system is actually a big part of this, a big part of the answer to this question. So let's get started quickly. Kevin especially talked a lot about that, so I will repeat a little bit of the things Kevin touched on. But the thing to start with, the thing is how we use content totally changed since the early years of web content management and when we were only just on a web page. And that's the key thing. We have to admit this is how we used to interact with our customers only in the browser, only through a browser window which probably was on the desktop or something even smaller than a desktop, but not much variety in the screen size, not much variety in the context where this was used. It was all the time sitting at a table, sitting at a desk. And the journeys we were building back then, because it was the early day of the web, were not that complex. They were single channel user journeys from the user to the web page, and that's all. And that was actually fairly simple. But very quickly, people understood, actually, we are living in a real world. I think it's not Kevin, but Dave who said that. And we can't ignore that. So mobility, of course, evolved a lot. And at the end of the day, the user journey has to be both in the real physical world, on the browser, on the mobile. And when we build systems which were not really able to embrace the omni-channel concept, what we are building is things which are really hurtful, which are just the opposite of delightful. Everybody went through that. I went through that 2 days ago, booking a trip on Expedia. I had a big error message at the end of my payment, which is always a little bit scary. So I called the help desk. And the help desk, well, I had to identify myself many times, giving my itinerary number, my ticket number, my name, they should know me. They have my phone number. I'm an Expedia registered user. They should immediately know me. But they didn't, so that was the first barrier. And the problem is I bought a package. So I bought hotel plus flight. So I could cancel the flight, but not the hotel. So they sent me to another service for the hotel. And again, they asked me the same questions. Who are you? When did you do that? That was just a few minutes ago. Actually, it was not anymore a few minutes. It was almost an hour ago, because this took me like almost an hour. And again and again and again. So we lose consistency. We lose content. We lose context. We lose everything when we jump from one channel to another. This is the result of technology, but this is even more the result of organizations, and it's because of siloed organizations. So I truly believe, yes, it starts with organization and strategy, but we also need technology. So disconnected multi-channel user journeys, that's not what we want. What we want is actually omni-channel user journeys where wherever the user is, whenever, whatever the channel he uses to interact with the brand, it is crucial that we can ensure that content is in consistency, that the transaction is known by all the touch points, that the brand is consistent, and that all this can convey to the user the feeling of being part of one single discussion and not many different discussions. So, yes, David, customer is king. Customer is king because that starts with this, but we also think as content technologists that for that we also need to make content able to fly to all those touch points in a way which actually will really fly, will not touch the ground, I don't know. So we have the customer on one hand, and we have content on the other hand, and our goal as a content management technology providers is to make this possible, of course, with the right organization supporting this. The best way to speak a little bit about that, actually, because those are concepts, they are very nice, and but the best way is to look at what our customers are doing. And I'd ask just Bård to take an example of one of our customers, which is in the middle of doing really great stuff with digital, with their business. So Bård, I'll let you go through that.
Thank you, Roland. So the customer I'm going to speak about is KitchenAid, Whirlpool. It's a group that make appliances, so kitchen things. And they, of course, have the challenge of global communication. They have offices around the world. They are selling products in France, in Germany, Italy, Norway, different languages. And ultimately, they are pushing these devices. So it's brand sites, you have product catalogs, of course, which is kind of the what you would think of as the obvious thing they're doing. Some of the interesting things they're doing around content marketing, that's what I'm going to speak a little bit about, which involves, of course, multiple channels, native apps, and they're also touching upon the Internet of Things, and that's kind of one of their products that they are now, I would say, experimenting with. They're making what they call the artisan cooker, which is, it's making you food. Yeah. You can think whatever you want about it, but it's a really cool technological product. And this is actually also connected to the internet. It's not that we push content to this device, but we're able to track and use this actually in terms of personalization. And it's part of the omni-channel user experience for KitchenAid. But what I'll focus on here is really how do they sell these devices? Because they can't sell it on specification. They really have to have a story around it, and it's quite obvious for them that they're now becoming a publisher. So they are doing a lot of recipes, and that's part of their content marketing strategy. So already here you have structured content, okay, distributed around the globe. So you have recipes that are in English. Obviously, you have French recipes. And you need to have content parity, as you said, across here. You need to make sure that if you do an optimization in a recipe, for example, perhaps it needed more salt, what do I know, or they introduce a new recipe, you have to have a process to roll this out in a global market. So it's quite interesting what they're doing here. And I would say also when you're talking about reusing this across devices, one thing is doing this on the website, but they of course also have other devices that we are seeing the content being used on, and in their case it's a number of apps where they're pushing the same kind of content that is on the websites, is on the mobile sites, and you have this in their recipe apps. And their vision now is also to not only do the recipe push, they're learning from how you use the devices. They actually will know what recipes you are making, so it can learn and adapt, ultimately personalize the content. So if you're just making hamburgers, I'm not sure if you can make a hamburger with that device, but let's say, they will probably stop sending you all these salad recipes, for example. But also it's the connected devices in so that they're able to operate the device from the iPhone. I do still think it's the other product that they're selling the most of, which are totally non-connected, made in the 50s. But when you're using that, you're still wanting to make great food based on great recipes. So of course, this content is also in book form. So it's kind of an interesting way to look at how they are taking their devices and creating an ecosystem of content so that you could really learn how to become a better chef. Isn't that the goal? And so that they can sell more products and build a more loyal customer base and have a better experience across all the channels and the devices. So this is just one example of, I think, a very interesting customer. But in order to achieve this, they obviously have had some thinking around content strategy. And we think that content strategy is even more important now than ever. And as part of this, and I would say perhaps specifically for KitchenAid, information architecture. You're talking about a complex piece of content, which is recipes, and they have a relationship between ingredients, recipes. You might have allergens. How do you say that in your language? Yeah, chefs. So it's a very complex information architecture, and it's not just about making a pretty picture that is going to be printed in a cookbook, because you have to future-proof that content, because you're going to really distribute this to all the devices that you have today, but there will be new devices tomorrow, and you need to be ready for those channels. And of course, as Roland will say a little bit more about later also, technology really matters here, because if you're not having the ecosystem of technology to enable you to reach these devices, you won't be able to create these communication platforms across all devices. So this is, we think, very important mix in order to achieve the kind of goal that you have defined. And to a large extent, if you look to KitchenAid, I think they have succeeded or on their way to making this quite a beautiful customer journey. I think you wanted to say a little bit about that. So,
yeah, I'll take it from here.
Yeah.
Stay where you are. We just wanted to close this before jumping in the panel with a few best practices that we just want to share that actually we learned from customers who are sometime failing, sometime not. And to start with, I think if you, to start with is, probably Kevin would speak so much better than me about that, but what we still, and that's actually almost a question, what we still see a lot is when we are in workshops with business people, marketers and things like that, they still think web page, or they still think a piece of paper. They still think, they are not really able to think content. They are not being able, in a way that my content might need to be reused somewhere. I don't know when, I don't know where, I don't know how, but it will be reused. I have an example, a personal example from my background. I worked in the digital music industry a long time ago, like 13 years ago, or just before joining Easy. And we were doing music download systems, which is another complex information architecture. Like we all know the iTunes story, which is terrible. It turned into such a monster just because information architecture was not understood or not done well. Well, those who got the information architecture of digital music well 15 years ago, there were no Spotify, there were no SoundCloud, there were not all those platforms of today, but the content can fly on those platforms now like a breeze. There's no problem, there's no re-engineering to do, there's nothing to do. They are now using their same platform, their same content catalog, and their same business system, just with new channels. Because content strategy, because information architecture where things understood. And their colleagues who actually thought about printed catalog when they would think about their music catalog, well, they just got it wrong. They got systems that cannot be reused. And the outcome of that is just business efficiency, business in terms of productivity as well. So think reuse and try to bring this early in the stages of your project.
And to get reuse, and this is back to, well, you said 2003 when we were making this content engine, which is the technology we're kind of focusing on. When you're thinking about, let's say, KitchenAid, and they're going to make beautiful recipes, we too often see customers, they go and hire a brilliant designer, and they make something really beautiful, and then you are still not able to reuse this for any other channels because they totally skip anything connected to information architecture, they don't store structured content, and they really are not able to reuse the content across channels. Because it's information architecture is kind of the geeky part of this side when you're talking about information, because you need to decouple it, you need to make sure that it's structured, and way too often we see that customers are storing, you call it, blobs into their repository. Good example, we're working with Bård Media, so they're publishing recipes. Again, KitchenAid is becoming a competitor, perhaps, somehow. Yeah. And they have brilliant recipes, 30 years of archive, all in PDFs. They're not able to, it's not even, it's PostScript files, so they're not able to reuse that content for any other channel. So the value and the time spent on creating those beautiful pieces of content is gone. So really focusing on information architecture and getting the information architecture either as a content strategist or specifically getting it as a role internally or hire it externally, I think that would be a very good recommendation. And hire Kevin.
Another one which we care a lot for, which is more technology, more than strategy, but actually it's a technology strategy. Don't lock yourself into a single technology. Don't think you, Subrat mentioned this really well, constant transformation when it comes to the technology landscape. So if you build a content hub, should we do this, David? I'm not sure. Dave? No, if you build any kind of content repository or try to make something that will be able to evolve with the technology landscape so that any kind of front end, any kind of application, any kind of architecture could connect to it. So it's about APIs, it's about time to market, it's about ability to build fast on the technology platform that you picked. And those things are not simple to measure, actually. But yeah, be careful to be locked into something which makes you slow, because the only thing is there's nothing as bad as being slow now.
On the same topic, you should be able to create your content once and then publish it everywhere. At least have that as a vision. Sometimes you won't be able to do it, but in most cases you are able to do it, but you don't. Take, for example, Facebook or Instagram. If you have brilliant photos created and pushed to Instagram, if you as an editorial or marketing team don't have access to that in your, call it CMS or editorial environment, you won't reuse it. So make sure that you have that information in a central repository, even though it's syndicated and pushed out to these social networks, which is typically what we're talking about today. And also, of course, you have the situation where, okay, you suddenly lost the right to use that image. You have to take it back. And if you don't have a centralized repository where you actually have information on all the channels you have pushed that information out to, it's kind of hard, and it's a lot of manual labor. So have this vision, be aware of all the channels you're publishing to, and make sure that you have central control over it. At least if you don't, be aware that you are aware that you don't have it, so that you can work around it manually.
And the last one, before jumping in the panel, is, I would say it's this idea of, I think when we speak about digital transformation, I mean, it might be business transformation first, but I really think that there's a transformation which forces companies and organizations now to think that they won't do a project, like a web project. They need to think product. They do a product. They need to think, when they use a CMS, for instance, they need to think this is a technology that they will use to build their own product. They cannot think this is a commodity like my Exchange server that I just installed, and it will fly and deliver value. It cannot deliver value if you are in this mindset of thinking, oh, let's set up a CMS, get our user on the CMS, et voila. No, this doesn't work. You need now, in the digital world, you need to be a software company, even if you're KitchenAid, because you're building a software product. Even if it's only available as a service, you don't distribute this product as software like we do. You're in the software business. You're in the media business. You're in the software business. So moving digital, you are more than your core business. You're also in the media business, and you're also in the software business. Mm-hmm. So that's very important when it comes to how you will tackle your product. This being said, I think we will move to the panel, right? So Dave, Kevin, and Subrata? Is that good?